In Southeast Asia, herbs are not just pretty little garnishes, and although they do add quite a bit of flavor to things, that's only secondary to their primary purpose, which is they act as the leafy green vegetable in a lot of cases. Herbs will grow really quickly and very prolifically in the climate. It's hot, it's humid, they have a year-round growing season, they're only about 10 degrees north of the equator. You can literally cut back cilantro one day and it'll grow back 4, 5, 6 inches overnight. You will see the herbs presented in the morning in the marketplace as fresh and pretty much all sold out by about 10 in the morning by the locals. Whatever's left over is either sold to the tourists or is ground into pastes because they don't have a lot of refrigeration in Southeast Asia, so anything that can't be kept alive is sold either shortly after it's killed or else it has to be processed into something else. So the herbs are cut really early in the morning, brought to market, kept fresh as possible by maybe spritzing them with a little bit of water, but by 10 a.m. in Saigon it's 98 degrees out and everything is starting to wilt. There's very little ice, there's very little refrigeration. So the fresh herbs have been sold for the day, whatever's left starts getting ground up into pastes to make sauces and other things with them later on in the day. Now, as I explained yesterday in lecture, the table salad is not a salad in a Western context. It's not served as a separate course. It is served with the food. It could be served with snacks. It could be served with the main meal. But generally it's set at the table whenever you order anything savory, and you use the leaves of the herbs to flavor your food. You use the leaves from the lettuce to pick up hot food you might put into your mouth that might be too hot to hold with your fingers, maybe a spring roll that just came out of hot fat. You use strips of cucumber similarly to pick up hot fried things, or just to add a crunchy cooling texture to other things that you might be using. So it's a multifaceted sort of condiment, garnish, eating utensil sort of display, and typically served in a large bowl, family style. Now, since we don't do family style service here, we compose a little table salad, which really isn't authentic in the Vietnamese sense, but it serves our service purposes and does sort of give a nod to that type of service that would be done in Vietnam. Now, before I compose the table salad, I need to prepare the herbs, and I want to talk a little bit about this as well. Most of the time in Western cooking, in Western kitchens, I see herbs prepared improperly and then held during service in a manner which doesn't really benefit the herbs all that much. Usually what you see, and I'm sure you've seen this yourselves, the herbs will be sometimes cut before they're cleaned, and then they wash the sand away with the flavor. It goes down the sink. Now, that's totally wrong. Sometimes the herbs are plucked off of the stems before they're washed. Again, you're going to lose a lot of flavor, and the leaves are going to absorb a lot of moisture during the washing period, diluting the flavor that they have. That's like the next worst case. Third, they might be washed whole, which is good because it maintains the flavor, but once they're picked, they're left on ice or in water to get soggy and soaked. That's not so great. So in an Asian style, especially Southeast Asian style, you would wash your herbs whole. Then, if you were going to use them in a restaurant context, or even a street vendor context, you would pick the leaves or the branches that you needed off and hold them not in standing water because they would just get limp and lifeless pretty quick, but rather underneath banana leaves or wrapped in moist towels just to keep them hydrated and turgid, but not overwhelming them with water and making them soggy. So what I'm going to suggest from going forward from this point, unless you're told otherwise, the best way to handle herbs would be to take a bunch of herbs, and cilantro is a great example because it usually comes in very sandy. Take a large quantity of water, just for the purpose of this demo, I'm using a bowl of water, but you could, if you had a lot, use a sink, of course. Now, this water is very, very sandy, so honestly, I would probably just dump this water and redo it again. But just because we're shooting a demo right now, I'm going to let it rest for a second. We'll change the water and re-rinse this. Now, to dry it off, simply just go over to the sink, go over to a place where you can shake it without baptizing everyone, and shake it off. Now, it is clean, it's fairly dry, and it's still intact, so you haven't disrupted the integrity of the herb. At this point, you could put it back in the storage if you had to, and it would stay good for a couple of days, at least in our culture, because we have refrigeration. So, cleaning other herbs would be similar, and the herbs that we have for the table salad here are spearmint, Thai basil. Those two you're probably familiar with. Cilantro, which I've already washed. Saw leaf herb, which for obvious reasons has that name, which is has a slight cilantro-like flavor. From the Caribbean, you might be familiar with culantro, which is similar to cilantro and is similar to saw leaf herb. And then a distinctly Southeast Asian herb called rao ram. Rao ram is sort of like fat tarragon with a woody stem. The flavor is also similar to cilantro, but a little bit peppery. So it's like spicy cilantro. Now, as I said, we're going to do a sort of stylized presentation of this table salad. So rather than just clumping everything together in a bowl and letting people help themselves to whatever they want, we're going to compose it. Taking a mandolin, this will cut it a little bit thick. We're going to cut thin slices of cucumber, sort of ribbon fashion. We're going to take a leaf or a sprig of each of our herbs. We're going to take this cucumber ribbon that we've made and wrap it around our herbs. We're going to take a leaf of clean red leaf lettuce. And now we have our table salad, which becomes a functional, edible garnish on every entree plate. Now, traditionally, in reality, again, we would serve a large bowl full of all these things, and accompanying it would also be Thai bird chilies for spice, and bean sprouts for nutrition and for added crunch. I find that here at the CIA, the chilies will go wasted, as well as the bean sprouts probably won't get used that much either, and it's a lot of labor to clean all those bean sprouts. So I've streamlined this to represent a table salad, but you should know going forward that we typically also include bean sprouts and Thai bird chilies. If you set up a station where all of your herbs are cleaned and your lettuce is cleaned and your cucumbers are cut, then you can make 8 or 10 salads per station, lay them on blue plastic cafeteria trays, and then cover them with moist paper towels. Do this early in the day, keep them in the refrigerator until you're ready for service, and keep them covered with moist paper towels at service on your station. Now, lastly, I have this group of buckets over here that are lined with moist paper towels. As I said earlier, during service in Western kitchens, you'll frequently see that people are holding their herbs in water or on ice, and you'll find the sous chef or the person at the pass reaching into the water and pulling out the squeeze and shaking every plate that is garnished, just be shaking the water off. To me, that's a silly waste of time of 2 or 3 seconds per plate. Cumulatively over a service period, that adds up. I would suggest that you wash your herbs, as I suggested already, shake the whole bunch dry, and then as you're picking either leaves, if that's what you need, or sprigs, if that's what your recipe calls for, put them in containers that are suitable to hold what you need, lined with moist paper towels. When you're finished picking them, you fold the towels over the top, and now they can stay at room temperature. They're clean, they're dry, they're hydrated, they're not going to dry out as long as you remember to keep the towels moist, and from time to time you just spritz a little bit more water on them, just like they would do on the streets of Saigon. And that way your herbs have a nice long shelf life during service, and if you don't disrupt the integrity of them any further than this, take care of them even at the end of service, you can simply wrap them in that moist paper towel, slide them in a plastic bag, and they're good for another day. So if you over prep today, it's not as if you chopped the herbs and ruined them, you don't have to throw them out. They're still good for the following day. So with all of this in mind, I want each station to go and make 10 each. You're not all going to need 10, but some stations might need 12 or 15. The others, so you'll borrow from each other. Make 10 table salads on a tray each station. Do that first and early so it's out of your way and off your radar.